Welcome back to the Form is Temporary podcast, and we're absolutely delighted for this Game Week 20 preview. It will be the first pod of 2025, and after a little bit of a break in the month of January, it'll be the first one for a few weeks because we'll be going on a little bit of a time off with some busy kind of months of January and February, but we'll be back kind of end of February. I imagine around sort of the 23rd of January. But we're really excited this week to get on a founding member of the FPL community. He did a lot of work with Fantasy Football Scout, the likes of Scoutcast, helping with great members of the community like Mark, Simon, Granville back in the day, and of course Let's Talk FPL Andy, helping out with Scout, and David Monday as well. Some great names in the community, and of course always producing videos now with Fantasy Football Scout with the likes of Neil presenting his team news updates and much more. Breakfast Club, all those great FPL videos of the past and the present as well. So delight to say we've got on for our Game Week 20 preview Joe from Fantasy Football Scout. Firstly, how are you, Joe?
Yeah, good. Good to be here, especially off the back of a pretty okay Christmas in FPL terms. And in real life as well, it was very good, relaxing. But in FPL, it was quite good. Even though I have no Isak, and everyone will think you're crazy. But luckily, I've got other players that did okay, and I'm quite a patient manager, so hence I've got the likes of Brian and Bomo still in my side and things like that. So I've got a green arrow over Christmas period, so I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Patience is key a lot of the time in FPL, so it's nice to see that get the reward. And as always, we've got our co-host Chris. Happy New Year, Chris. Hope you're well.
Yes, thank you. You too. Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm intrigued now to see your team, Joe, after that little teaser. But yeah, no, all good, thank you.
Brilliant stuff. Well, we'll get into this Game Week 20 preview. We'll be, of course, covering the basics of how our Game Week 19s got on, kind of the highs and lows of the game week, and potential transfers that we might be making ahead of Game Week 20's deadline. We're back to a kind of regular schedule now, which is quite nice after the busy period. So it's another 11 o'clock deadline on Saturday ahead of the 12:30 game between Tottenham and Newcastle. We'll also be looking at some potential differentials in Game Week 20 that might help you rise up the ranks. So, maybe with our, pod coming for the next couple of game weeks after this week, maybe these players you could bring in and hopefully get good points for the next 3 or so game weeks, but especially looking towards Game Week 20. And we'll see how Joe can do in the differentials standings. We've got kind of guests that have come on and seen how many points they've got. So we'll have to see out of his 3 how they get on. And also we will then look at how the head-to-head league got on. And it has to be said, Chris had a fantastic Game Week 19, and he's had a certain movement up the table in that head-to-head league. So we'll mention that, of course. And then we have always love to end on the quiz. So we'll see how Joe can do up against Chris this week with our themed first 2025 quiz of the year. Brilliant stuff. Well, in that case, we'll get straight into the FPL then, and we'll start talking about our teams. So, first of all, Joe, could you just talk us through how you got on in Game Week 20, really, Game Week 19, I should say. Sort of transfers made, that sort of thing, and how many points you got.
Yeah, I've got 79 points, and yeah, pretty good. I think the average was 66. So I got a small green arrow for that week. But as I said, so I always look in fixture blocks. You look at the Christmas fixture block, Game Week 17 onwards till now, to Game Week 20. That's all part of it. So you've got fixture rotation. You've got player rotation rather. You've got illnesses coming in. Havertz, for example, he upset his owners because he was ill, and that's what happens over Christmas. So you've got to see that as a block. And then the next block, sort of Game Week 21. So that's the way I look at these things. I look at my green and red arrows in blocks as well. But it just happens I've got a green arrow this week as well. So I'm up to 236k. I was 340k going into this fixture block with Henderson, Robinson got me a return. Gabriel, Alexander-Arnold, he was new in the previous week, 15. Palmer, Sarr, he was also new in. This week, I think it was this week actually. It's hard to tell over the fixture periods there. So Sarr was new in. And Mo Salah, obviously. Rogers did well. Brian Mbomo stood on my side. Nicholas Jackson, he's on a final warning at the moment. Cunha, sadly, didn't get me the 1 point, but got me the haul the week before. And then on my bench, Chris Wood. So I could have even got an even bigger haul there. But out of all of my players, I wouldn't have got that. I wouldn't have put Chris Wood in. And loads of people got like Hall and Lewis Hall and players like that. So I think Game Week 19, if there was a narrative for Game Week 19, it was bench points.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bench points. Pedro, I saw on a number of benches, got 9 points. So I look at Chris Wood with his 12 points and think, actually, I probably got away with that lightly because I've seen a lot of 20 plus scores on benches this week.
Yeah, it's a very good point you make, Joe. I think this week, Chris, a lot of people had benching headaches, which it feels nice for me because I've had my benching woes this season. So for everyone else to be in the same boat as me for once feels like a nice time for my own sanity, really, Chris. But did you see any other sort of players that people were benching, and did you have that issue in your own team?
I did, yeah. Unfortunately, I had 9 points on my bench with Semenyo and Robinson both returning. But yeah, I think we can take solace in the fact that we were all kind of in the same boat, like you say, Roberto. And I think it's just a testament to the squad depth in most teams now. You've kind of got to make difficult decisions who you kind of bench, and sometimes the fixtures look poor, but they return. I mean, Semenyo is a prime example. I think back to that Man City game when I know I definitely benched him, and I think it was maybe quite a logical benching, but yeah, he then delivers a double-digit haul. So just one of those, you kind of have to take the rough with the smooth, really.
Yeah, but I suppose as well, the other argument you can say, Joe, is, with the likes of the Everton Liverpool postponement, the likes of, there's some murmurings of potential games this weekend with, the snow getting called off. I don't know if there's any sort of weight behind it, but at this point in the season where you've got players like Rogers, who's got suspended, obviously Timber as well, and Cunha getting his ban, I guess having these 15-man squads is now becoming more important than ever, isn't it?
Well, that's it. I mean, we that's why I look, hop back to the fixture blocks again. But part of the thing about this fixture block was there's going to be rotation, there's going to be illness, there's going to be weather. So you build up your squads. That's why loads of people, Chris, you detailing your 9 points there on the bench. You got away with that pretty luckily because there's quite a few more. But I don't mind that. I mean, I think always thinking in tiers of players. What you want is the top tier, own them, play them. Next tier is own them, bench them. They're in your side. They're going to go up in price. Great. And then the third tier is don't own them. And the worst tier is transfer them out for a haul. And so in all of that, I don't mind having bench points because at least I've got them. I own them. They're in my team. And it's sort of an analytics approach really to that. So you're sort of maximizing your transfers. So instead of some people saying, oh, I don't, this player's like Rogers, for example, he's happily going to be sitting on my bench. He's not playing. No. Obviously, he's suspended. Some people will look at that and think, well, I haven't got a strong bench. I'm going to have to replace him, or I'm going to have to replace someone else in my team. So I don't have to make that transfer. I am going to use the Cunha suspension as an excuse to finally get Isak in. But I don't look at that as, oh my God, Cunha suspended. I'd quite happily bench him. Houston is my first sub against Everton. He is an excellent player, goal scoring defender against one of the worst attacks in the Premier League. Yeah. But he's on my bench. I'd like to play him, but I need Isak in. So that's what I take from what's happening at the moment with the period of this winter. Is the rotation is that, and this could be the week where that bench comes in handy. Rogers, Cunha, Timber. If you've got all three, I mean, I've got two of them. If you've got all three and you've got a really strong bench, in comes your bench. If you've got a Bournemouth defender, wow, play them. If you've got a Fulham defender, great, play them. I think this is the week we win.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. I mean, 70 points for you in game week 19 was really, really nice. Obviously
79.
before Mbumo's points came in, of course.
Yeah.
It was definitely a good week for the kind of high scores, I think. But it's interesting with that haul from Alexander-Arnold, there, Chris, because we talked about him on the last pod, wondering, is he going to be value? I think I actually said 15 points I was hoping for. So it's funny how that's panned out. But do you think going forward, I think a lot of people will still say he's not worth the value. You can go for a Virgil van Dijk and get a similar sort of return. But do you think that game against West Ham, Chris, has shown that maybe Trent is worth bringing in soon?
I mean, yeah, he's kind of threatened a big haul this season. I think that was his first goal of the season, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I mean, I think he does offer, obviously, a lot more attacking threat than any other Liverpool defender. So, I think if you are kind of looking for that all-around kind of potential for points, he is probably the best of the bunch. But I can see the argument for going for a Van Dijk or even a Canate when he returns, just to kind of make that saving. But I think for now, after his return now, if you own him, you're really laughing because he's in great form as well. He has been threatening kind of that monster haul. So it's nice to see that he's actually finally it's materialized. And the fixtures on the FDR don't look great, but I think apart from Forest, the defences he's facing in the next few aren't brilliant. So I think with his creativity from deep, he can make a difference again, hopefully.
Yeah, 100%. And I also noticed in your team there, Joe, you've got Sarr, who blanked in that Southampton game. And, Crystal Palace assets were understandably, kind of brought in masses in game week 19. But obviously the only one that really delivered in that fixture was Eberechi Eze. So you looking at Ismail Assar thinking, you think he'll come good with these fixtures that are still really nice?
Yeah. Usually one of the reasons I got him in is just to save money. So for my team, and that's the thing a lot of other, say, content creators I don't think they fully explain about their decisions. So, who are the best players? You want to get the best players in, but sometimes for your squad and the money, and you want to look ahead to decisions as well. So for me, when Saka got injured, I got Sarr in, and that enabled me to upgrade Rico Lewis to Alexander-Arnold. And it's given me enough money in the bank for whenever Cunha gets his ban or whenever, well, particularly when his fixtures change, which I think they do anyway from this game week.
Yeah.
I can move to Isak. So I've got that money. So when I look at Sarr, I think, he's a really good attacking player who's just destroyed my team, Brighton. And it's a fantastic asset to have, but he's also really cheap. And I'd look at Sarr and I think you're an enabler for Alexander-Arnold. You're the reason I wouldn't have Alexander-Arnold's 15 points if it wasn't for Sarr. That's what Sarr gives you.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be able to get to Isak without a hit this weekend for Cunha without Sarr. So Sarr for me is many things. It's not just one player. But, he happens to be a very strong player as well. And I think his XG, expected goals in that last Palace match, which he blanked in, was 1. So he should have got a goal there. And, he's been really good in recent weeks. I mean, I've got some. I'm just quickly looking at his stats here. Yeah. So, I mean, Eze and Sarr. So Sarr is better than Eze in terms of expected goal involvement last 6 game weeks.
Yeah.
So Sarr's on every 188 minutes he's expected to get a goal involvement, which is more than every other game. Whereas Eze's is 240 minutes. Obviously, Eze does have that sort of creation, but he's only creating one more chance than Sarr. And then you look at shots inside the box, which is what you want from a player. Ismail Sarr's had 12 in the last, so he's getting 2 each match. Eze 8. I know there's been, Eze has been injured for some of it as well, but you'll get a very broadly similar one if you could look at every 6 matches rather than every 6 game weeks. Yeah. So I think Sarr is a great enabler there. And because, and I used to do these Meet the Manager videos for Fantasy Football Scout. One of them I did with, there's always a tidbit from the people I interview that sticks with me for years. And one of them was with Josh from Always Cheating. Yeah. And he says, when the game throws you a bone, you take it. Saka's injury, in a way, was that bone. Yeah. Because suddenly we had a 10 million player who we could get down to like a 6 million, 5 million player, free up that money, invest it elsewhere. And apart from Palmer, Salah, and Isak, I can't think of any other player over 9 million that I want. So use that money. I'm not going to just sit there with 5 million on my bench. And also there's all these midfielders, on a lot of videos in the last week or two with FPL General, I did his team reveal video, and with Tom Freeman. we've discussed these 5 to 6 million midfielders. There's so many of them. You can
Mm,
have a whole midfield of them, and it will look great. You'd have Semenyo there, Sarr. You'd have all these players. Enzo Fernandez is still chipping away with returns for Chelsea. When they improve, that is.
mm.
Brian Mbomo, what's he's still like under 7.5 million or something. He's about 7. I don't know what he is now. I
Yeah, I
can't
think
remember
he's
because I've
around
been in
that.
my team for so long
Yeah.
that you don't even notice the price. Oh yeah, 7.7 now.
Mm,
So
yeah.
it's still really cheap.
It is. It feels like that sort of season where you can leave a team for a few weeks, and because obviously with
Yeah,
the five
that's
free
the aim.
transfers being kind of built up as well by not making transfers, you don't necessarily have to be trigger happy with those moves. But yeah, no, it's really nice logic, and I think you got a really nice team there with the likes of Rodgers and Mbumo, and obviously Salah coming through for the captainers in game week 19 as well. You've also got there Nicholas Jackson, who we were worried about before the game week. He did get benched. I ended up starting him as well. I had a decision between him and Hall. That was a bit of a harsh swing because obviously Hall got the 12 pointer on a lot of people's benches. But do you think going forward, Chris, that Jackson is going to be more safe for minutes kind of outside of that Ipswich game?
I would have thought so. I think he's obviously the first choice, and I think the fact that Chelsea have had a couple of poor results, and obviously against Ipswich when he wasn't playing, I think it's going to kind of make it more clear in Maresca's mind. I would imagine that he is the guy they need to be playing most minutes up there. So yeah, I think his minutes will become safer over the next few weeks, and the fixtures aren't terrible either. So yeah, I think he's one to just stay patient with for now.
It's interesting because I listened to your kind of game week review talk, Joe, and you were talking about Jackson, and you seem quite interested to move him on. Are you still
Yeah,
that
yeah, not
thought?
not yet, not yet. But okay, so he's got me basically a 1 9 point haul in game week 16 against Brentford.
Yeah,
And then it's been 3 blanks in a row. And when you get a player that's over 8 million and they blank 3 weeks in a row, I start to get jittery about them. Then you look at the fixtures and they're pretty good. So away to Crystal Palace, good. At home to Bournemouth, good. At home to Wolves, good. So I look at those fixtures and think, I'm going to give him those. But if he once again blanks or maybe just gets an assist or even just one goal in those three, then I'm looking at 1 to 2 returns over 6 game weeks. And then he's got Man City away. Man City, I think, will improve by the end of January.
yeah,
So I think then the fixtures become a little bit more patchy for Chelsea. Then I'll be looking to move him on. But then who do you move him on to? And that's been a big topic, not for Jackson, rather for Cunha. So a lot of people always have Isak. So Cunha to Isak's easy for me. I don't have Isak.
yeah,
But if you've got Isak and Jackson and another striker, who do you move him on to? So a lot of people are thinking Chris Wood. Well, I've already got him. Jesus could be that person. But
yeah,
then his haul last night was because Havertz was ill. So
yeah.
will Jesus play there? And there's still too much up in the air while Saka's not there.
Mm,
And there are obviously. I mean, I still like Pedro. I often say about Pedro, he's actually better for the tougher fixtures. Most people will look at Brighton's fixtures and go, "Oh no, time to move him on." But I look at those fixtures and go, "Great." So I mean, recent weeks, where did he get his hauls? Way to Bournemouth, tough fixture.
yeah,
Blanks against the easy games at home, and then what did he do? Get a 9 pointer against Aston Villa. Wasn't expecting that. And then
mm,
you look at Brighton's fixtures going forwards, and you think, well, this is Pedro time. Arsenal at home. Thank
yeah,
you, thank you very much. And it goes on. Ipswich away. That's when I'd be looking to be worried about
yeah.
Pedro. And then you got Manchester United away. That's quite Pedro-y.
He does feel
And
like a bit of a big game player, doesn't he?
he's a
It's
big
like,
he's a really, really good player. But he's unfortunately we don't have a fit number 9 at the moment. Well, we just had the team news from the manager today that the Welbeck's still out and Ferguson's still out as well. So that's meaning that Pedro is playing as the number 9. He's not really a number 9. He's a number 10. And
yeah,
that's but he can still get a haul from the number 9. But what I want to see, you want to see a striker, him behind him. And if you see that and it's against a tough side, then just captain Pedro because
yeah.
you're going to get some good returns there.
Definitely, he's the most reliable for minutes in that Brighton
Yeah,
attack, and
and
for
on
also getting.
penalties.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I really like that. No, you got a really nice looking team there, Joe, and yeah, obviously Chris Wood on the bench. It's hard to take, but I think going forward, just to have him is a great thing to do. Like it is annoying when Jackson didn't need to come on, and I get a lot of people would have just hoped that he didn't, but
I think,
it's
well, that's the problem with the Jackson at the moment. The way Chelsea are playing is he did need to come on, and so I was resigned when I saw that team, and I thought if they're not 3-0 up at half time with Nkunku scoring a hat trick, then Jackson's coming on, and he did
yeah,
55th minute, and I didn't mind that. I didn't mind 45 minutes of Jackson needing to do something there, so I'm happy to keep him at the moment. But yeah, he's on a watching brief for a
yeah,
transfer. But there's
definitely.
no other players I particularly want to transfer out. So it's just going to be reacting to injuries, really. It's hopeful.
Yeah.
That's the aim anyway. That's the aim of everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got to be reactive in this game. But yeah, hopefully Henderson can get a few more clean sheets. I brought him in as well this game
Mm.
week, and yeah, it's a shame that they conceded that early goal to
Who,
Southampton. But
who is your other goalkeeper?
well, funny you mention that because it's why I had to make the Flecken to Henderson transfer. So my backup is a 4.0 from Fulham, Bender.
Okay.
So I simply had to make the change. But the irony
What?
is that
What
Flecken
from
didn't end up playing.
from
So
Futurama? You've got the Futurama robot.
yeah, it's not him, unfortunately. It would be great if it was, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I actually was kind of looking at the Brentford team news, and when I saw Flecken starting, I just thought, well, that's typical. I don't even own him, and he still finds ways to cause me pain. But yeah, no, I'm hoping Henderson can do well in the next coming weeks. But
Yeah, I
you've got
think
some
so. I think
nice,
I think the Chelsea game is probably his toughest. I think
yeah,
I believe their fixtures are good until game week 31.
mm,
So that's why I
yeah,
got him in as well. I just didn't want to worry about it anymore. I just want to get a
exactly.
keeper with good fixtures in.
Yeah, it's a nice long term view, and you've got some nice cheap options on your bench there as well. With Verbruggen, your kind of
Mhm.
rotation option as well, and then Hoyson and Mikalenko, two really good defensive cheap options. So yeah, I really like that team. I've got to say. So well done for that game week, Joe. Looking at your team then, Chris, for game week 19, you scored a really impressive 85 points. So talk us through it. You made just the one transfer because you were talking about replacing Johan Wisser in the end. You brought in Jean-Philippe Mateta, but still a really nice game week for you.
Yeah, no, pretty pleased with it. As Joe was saying, it's been quite a strong week all round with the average quite high. So yeah, no, a lot of your big players delivering. I had Trent, Salah, obviously, and Rogers with his double-digit haul again. So yeah, no, pretty pleased with it really. Mateta, obviously, a bit disappointing he blanked, but as we were saying with Saar, I think it's the long term view with the Palace assets, and he's a bit more expensive, obviously, than the Ezes and the Saars. So he'll want to. I'll monitor, obviously, but it's too early to be thinking about trying to replace him already after one game. I think on his underlying data looks decent, kind of all through the season, but it hasn't really translated into many big hauls. He scored against Ipswich. That was the last time he had a goal contribution. So I'm hoping he can turn his form around. And I think, as we saw last season, he is quite a streaky player. So I think if he
Mm,
can get a goal, it might set him off on a little bit of a run. And obviously, with Eze back, I'd hope that there's going to be more kind of opportunities created for him. So, yeah, well, hopefully, let's see with that one. But elsewhere in my team, yeah, there wasn't really any massive disappointments. Obviously, having the two Arsenal, the double up in the Arsenal defence was a bit annoying that they conceded a goal despite the XG for Brentford being so low. So I think, yeah, that's not too disappointing really. But when you have two of them, it does kind of ruin your defensive numbers a little bit. But
yeah.
yeah, it's not the end of the world, I guess. And then yeah, I had Kulusevski as well from Spurs. Who has, yeah, he's been kind of chipping away with returns for the last few game weeks. So, and I just think he's quite a reliable player in that Spurs team. He's going to play most minutes, whereas maybe Madison, who possibly more explosive and can deliver those bigger hauls, he has the tendency to get benched. So,
Mm.
yeah, I think I went a bit safer with that Spurs choice. So, yeah, no, good game week all in all.
Yeah, obviously very unlucky with the Cunha kind of halftime sub. I mean, I don't think many people would have expected that, but yeah, obviously now being banned with kind of it's a bit crazy, isn't it? Joe, that he only gets 2 games banned, and obviously with one of them being in the FA Cup, it's just one Premier League fixture against Nottingham Forest that Cunha will miss out on.
Yeah, I mean, if I already had Isak, I'd be partially tempted to bench him, but for me, he's a route to getting Isak in.
Yeah,
Also, the fixtures are tough, and it's probably one of the toughest runs. But he did do well in tough runs before, and he is a very good player. But Nottingham Forest at home, he's not playing in. But then he's got Newcastle away, that's tough. Chelsea away, tough. Arsenal at home, tough. Aston Villa at home, tough. Liverpool away, tough. Bournemouth away, tough. Basically, it's tough until like Gameweek 26. They're the only ones I've looked at, so it might get better. In fact, I think it does get better. So for me, I'm looking to move him on to Isak, then Jackson, possibly back to Cunha at some point, and that will sort of coincide. So the Chelsea Gameweek 23 was when. So basically, if Jackson hasn't done enough by Gameweek 23, I'll move him on, and even though Cunha has Arsenal at home, I'll take it because he's only got sort of halfway through his tough fixtures. He can still get returns. He's just a really good player. You know, the best move I've ever done in fantasy football in 16 years was moving Haaland to Cunha and upgrading Semenyo to Salah and captaining Salah most weeks. And if I hadn't have done that, I have no idea where I'd be in the rankings. But it wouldn't be good. I mean, I'm not doing as well as you, Chris, or other people, but I'm pretty happy to be around the sort of 250k mark rather than million plus, which I would have been if I'd have kept Haaland and didn't get Cunha to he's performed better than Haaland. It's just a statement of fact.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that Haaland switch has been a massive swing, and Cunha's been a big part of that. So we thank you for your services, Cunha. But now he's missing out of Gameweek 20. So we'll see whether or not he comes back into our teams at some point. But yeah, really great game week again from you, Chris. I mean, 85 is so strong, and once again, it's thanks to Milenkovic, isn't it? Another clean sheet for Forest. Do you think it's getting to a stage where we should all be owning Forest defenders now?
I think definitely at least one. I think, yeah. I mean, they're just, and the numbers are suggesting that these clean sheets are like justified. They are like kind of deserved. It's not like they're getting lucky and it just kind of sells as keeping them in games. They have a really solid defensive base, and I think at least one in your team would be great. I mean, I think Aina is a good option. He has a bit of goal threat as well, but Milenkovic, he's chipped in with a couple of goals in recent weeks too. So yeah, I think really if you can get one in, they're all fairly cheap, aren't they? So I think it's a good idea, really.
Absolutely. No, really, really nice game week from you, Chris. And yeah, I do think that that Mateta transfer will pay off for you in the long term. So yeah, keep plugging away. And I mean, your overall rank of 9k is just fantastic. So yeah, hopefully you can really push on this season and get that top 10k finish. In terms of my game week 19, I did one transfer, I believe, and it was Henderson in for Flecken. So I scored 94 points, which I was very pleased with. Kind of really enjoyed this game week, I have to say, for a lot of reasons. The thing that was frustrating to end the game week was that Arsenal double defence. And I am thinking, as much as Timber's been a great own for me this season, of maybe just one defender as being enough. I don't know what you think about that, Joe, but Timber, he scored really well for me in game week 18 with those 9 points against Ipswich, but I just don't know if with the fixtures Arsenal have got, do you think only one defender will be enough?
I mean, no, I like attacking double ups. Those with Isak Gordon, for example, back in the day, Suarez, Sturridge. I'm never keen on defensive backup. I don't like defenders. I'd like to play all out attack each week because you're just waiting for that clean sheet to inevitably go. And if you've got, and I think it's more demoralising with Arsenal because you're paying 6 million or so, 5.5 million. It's not like you've got 2 4.5s in a defence, and you're just paying that money, and you think, what else could I do with that? And if I dip Timber down, what's Timber? 5.5 million, 6 million?
Yeah, something like 5.7 or something at the moment.
So you could dip him down to a 4.5, Nottingham, like Chris has done with the Nottingham Forest. And you've got a better performing defender for $500,000 or so cheaper, and you can invest that million elsewhere.
Yeah, it could be something I definitely think about doing. But yeah, really happy with my midfield. Kind of only Palmer being the kind of only one that blanked. But Luis Diaz, I was very pleased to see him score in that West Ham game. He was someone I brought in ahead of the Leicester match, and obviously with him getting benched in that one, I was hoping he'd start the West Ham game. But it did really, really well. Quite lowly owned. I think he's something like just over 20% owned. So that was a big game for me this week. And to see him sneak into the bonus was lovely. And then, of course, my front three. Jackson with 1, Wood with 12, which was just absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I absolutely love Chris Wood at this point. He's just carried my season. So yeah, I have a lot of kind of thanks to him, and Isak as well with another goal. His form this season, Chris, has just been outrageous. Isak, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be bringing him into your team right now, right?
Yeah, I think if you possibly can, you have to have him. He's probably on form. He's the best striker in the league at the moment. So I think you can't really go against him. And Newcastle's fixtures look pretty good over the next few weeks. So yeah, I think he's a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, it was a big week for the kind of double digit hauls, Joe. I mean, obviously Rogers, Trent, Salah, Wood as well. A lot of players like Hall as well. Obviously, he was sat on my bench, but it felt like if you had owned the right players this week, I see a lot of people in the high 90s, even the triple digits. So it felt like a big kind of Hall game week in a way.
Yeah, definitely. And you it's like a perfect storm at the moment. You've got players like Haaland, who many people have started with, who hasn't lived up to his price tag. And even if he starts getting a goal a game, he's still not living up to his price tag. And meanwhile, you've got these other players that are really cheap, that are not just sort of ticking along nicely with a 4.5 player with a nice 6-point return. They're getting double-digit hauls.
Yeah.
And they're really performing. So they've got their attacking threat, and that they're getting clean sheets as well. So so the winter has been a real sort of perfect storm for that as well. And it's really helped. So if you've invested in Newcastle, obviously they've done well. They've got the form and fixtures on their side. But you've got to move. I mean, the form is temporary, as your podcast says.
Absolutely.
And as Chelsea are a good example of that, they've got the good fixtures. They had amazing form. Whoop, dropped off a cliff. They're losing against Ipswich. Spurs, similarly, quite good fixtures, but their form just dropped off because they operate a system where they run their fullbacks into the ground and they don't have any backups, and that's a club-wide problem. So you're looking at these players, and it's just this nice perfect storm of good form and fixtures and cheap players. It's great.
Yeah. It is really nice. It feels like a kind of exciting season more than ever before, because these expensive players are, in the past always in our teams, like Son, like Haaland, but they're just not delivering this season. So we can kind of have that variation in our squads. So the frustrating thing with my bench this week, yet again, I've done it a few times this season, because it was a kind of call between Jackson, Hall, and Ahmad. And I ended up playing Jackson because I did think if I end up benching Jackson and he starts that Ipswich game, I'll be so annoyed. So he didn't, unfortunately, start, and then he came on for the 1-pointer. But Ahmad also blanked on my bench, first on my bench, and then Ahmad, he was frustrating again in that Man United game, Chris. Man United players have just been frustrating these last few weeks. Do we think Ahmad is one that he could return to form soon? Because he had a really good spell, but it's kind of died down a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think even in the Newcastle game, though, he did show promising signs. I think he was one of the only kind of bright sparks in that game. So I think if you are owning a Man United kind of midfielder or attacker, he is probably the go-to. And he's a nice little budget enabler elsewhere as well. So yeah, it's obviously just in the short term, the fixture next coming up is pretty much as hard as you can get. So he's probably, if you are going to keep him, he's a automatic bench this week. But
Well,
yeah,
it's interesting that. It is
are
interesting
you going to
that,
start him?
because I've got this dilemma now, Joe, because I've got Timber both suspended alongside Rogers. I'm basically in a situation where I think I'm going to have to start Ahmad, which is not great, but maybe this is where the conversation around replacements can come in, and we can talk about that now with our potential transfers ahead of Gameweek 20, because my team for next week, I'm pleased to say I can finally take on my New Year's resolution and actually start Lewis Hall. So this, of course, will be the week where he gets a 0-pointer away to Tottenham. But, we'll see. So at the moment, I've got Ahmad starting because I don't think I can play Semedo at home to Forest. I think Forest could absolutely batter Wolves. So would you be moving on Ahmad in this team, Joe, or do you think he could actually get something at Liverpool?
Do you have how much money do you have in the bank?
So I've got, unfortunately, not much. I think it's just the one free transfer, and I think about zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.2 in the bank.
Okay.
So yeah, it's 0.2.
With your team, I would say Ahmad looks a really good first sub because he could get a return against Liverpool. You never know, but you wouldn't want to play him. So yeah, if you're looking to move, I think you should be moving Timber out and go 4 at the back. And when we come to look at differentials, I've got a cheaper defender for you that would be free up 1 million, which you can be handy elsewhere. And he's a really good defender this week. And so, and there are many others as well. So that's what I'd be doing. I'd be looking to move Timber on. I'd go 4 at the back. I'd have Ahmed as a first sub and keep Rogers.
Yeah, I do like that. I think I probably will do that because I looked at the fixtures long term for Manchester United, Chris, and I think around kind of game week 21, 22, we might want players like Ahmad back in our team. So yeah, I think it makes
that's
sense.
what I'm saying. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think kind of keep the patience with him because I think he's, like I said, he's one of the brightest sparks so far under Amorim, and he seems to be starting most games, which can't be said of many Manchester United players. While Amorim's kind of trying to work out his best 11, so he's obviously made an impression on him. So I think, he's a good player to kind of hold for the next few weeks if you possibly can, and. It's just this week how you kind of navigate your way around it with the fixture he has. But as Joe said, I think that might be a good solution there, getting rid of Timber.
Yeah. I have looked at a few. Sorry,
I was just going to say, just of the fixtures, you mentioned the fixtures there, just so people are aware. Manchester United's fixtures were really good from game week 21. And Ahmad is probably, basically, Manchester United are toilet at the moment. They've got a manager with a certain style. They have not got the personnel for it. But nevertheless, they've got Southampton at home, Brighton at home, Fulham away, Crystal Palace at home. That's a lovely run of 4. And even if the team is terrible, Ahmed is good. So then you could you be able to play him. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I just think that it's important those fixtures there that and why I would advocate Ahmed staying, but on the bench this week.
Yeah, I think I agree. I like that logic. So I've got 0.2 in the bank to replace Timber. So I'm basically looking at any assets, 5.8 and down for defense. And I've looked at a couple already. So there's kind of quite a lot of options I can go for. One of them being a Forest defender, as we discussed earlier, so like an Ola Aina or a Nico Williams or something like that, or even a Milenkovic. And I also looked at Fulham with Robinson. I don't have any Fulham players, and they've obviously got great fixtures. Who would you be prioritising there, Chris?
I think either's good. I think, as you say, Fulham have the fixtures and Robinson has that kind of all-round potential for points. Again, Forest defender's good as well. I think either of those, to be honest, are pretty good. I think based on fixtures, Fulham probably have the better, don't they, over the next 10. And it depends kind of where you're planning to wild card as well, whether it needs to be more of a short-term or long-term pick. Because obviously Fulham have great fixtures in the short term as well. I
think that's definitely a good point. I think wildcarding kind of around this sort of 20 to 25, 26, 27 phase, I think a lot of people might be doing because, our second wildcard is now available. So we'll see how that kind of affects our plans. But interesting potential defenders there I could bring in for Timber. In terms of your transfer plans then, Joe, for game week 20, what are you looking to do this week?
Actually, easiest move I'll ever make. Cunha to Isak.
Yeah.
That's it, done. I've got I'm gonna do it tomorrow. He's already gone up 0.1. I didn't lose any money on Cunha just the way when I got him in, the last price drop for him didn't matter to me. So I've got 9.5, I think, and what's Isak now? 9.1, 9.2. So I'll prefer to. if I'll run the risk of him going up in price, which I don't think he will tonight. Anyway, we're recording this on Thursday, so I'm going to wait for Friday's team news, and then because you never know, he could have picked up an injury in training, and that would be really annoying if I got him in. So I'm going to wait then and get him in. Yeah, I mean that's simple. And then my front line will be Chris Woods, Isak, and Jackson, with Jackson possibly moving back to Cunha in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And in terms of your transfer plans, Chris, ahead of Game Week 20, what are you looking at the moment?
I mean, it's actually changed through this conversation because what you were saying, Joe, about when you're owning Isak, what to do with Cunha, kind of possibly alters a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, it's only one game he's missing in the Premier League, so and that is probably one of that is obviously a tough fixture against Forest. So he might be in a game where he wouldn't have got a return anyway. And I'm not, even though that on the FDR that it looks pretty poor over the next few weeks. I mean, the defensive performance of teams like in fairness, Newcastle in recent weeks have started to keep clean sheets, so that's another tough one. But I can see it even against Chelsea, even though it's a tough fixture on paper, that's a game he could possibly return in. So yeah, I don't know. I think maybe that's one I need to think about because obviously there are a lot of other good strikers who can get points in the short term as well. So he's one I'm going to have a kind of a mull over. And then Rodgers for me is probably a hold. So yeah, hope maybe a role in the transfer this week or get rid of Cunha.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're in a nice place, Chris. So you've got the luxury of being able to not do much with your team at the moment. I just noticed as well that I had Semedo. I forgot to mention that. So I did have the option, Joe, of moving him on to a Forest or Fulham defender. Do you think you'd still sell Timber in that situation?
Ooh, yeah, I think so because I wouldn't. I personally don't like as a defensive double ups. I would look to be moving Semedo and Timber on over the next few weeks. So look at rotations as well. But also, or just players that have just got good fixtures. So obviously Fulham, you're right to target them. And Robinson, I got him in a couple of weeks ago. I had him in. I wild carded him out game week 6, I think was my wild card. Regretted it ever since and finally got him back in recently. But he was in my team for the first few games. And he is great. I mean, he's the top assisting defender in the game. He's got 7 assists. He won't be at Fulham next season. I suspect he'll be at one of the Champions League sides. I mean, he is very good. Yeah, I mean that's the move I'll make. But you know there are lots of other options in that price bracket, and then Semedo can move to them as well. But I just think take that advantage. There is the psychological aspect as well. When you remove a player that's definitely not playing, you don't feel bad when they do something because they can't.
Yeah.
So as I said,
100%.
the worst thing of a player ownership is not owning them and then just transferring them out before a haul. But transferring them out so if Timber, for example, got a double-digit haul the following week because you've already got rid of him, psychologically you've removed him from your team. He's just simply a player that's done well. That's nothing to do with you.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love that framing of it. It definitely helps you make you feel much better about yourself. So yeah, 100%. Really, really great. No, some great transfer plans there, and yes, we'll see how we get on with those transfers. But what we're going to get into now is our differentials of the week. So we have a differential section suggesting a few for the upcoming game week under 10% owned. So we'll start with you, Chris, this time. What players are you looking at? Obviously, you did quite well last week with Strand Larsen. He ended up scoring despite getting benched, and Cunha and Sarr were your other two that were unfortunate in game week 19. But how are you looking to kind of approach this game week 20 then?
Yeah, I mean, I think we spoke about Fulham's fixtures, so I think Raul Jimenez is still under 10% owned. So for me, he's a near certainty as a differential. Even in the mid to long term as well, he looks quite good as an option. So there's always the kind of risk with a bit of rotation with him and Muniz, but I think he is very much first choice. But it's when there's kind of midweek games and maybe a short turnaround between matches that Marco Silva has the luxury of having 2 very effective strikers. So yeah, I'd be tempted to go for Jimenez. Yeah, I like other Fulham assets as well. I mean, Alex Iwobi has performed really well so far this season. But yeah, I think he's probably the one I'd go for out of the Fulham kind of forward line and midfield.
Yeah, I really like Jimenez. I think he is, interesting because obviously getting benched against Southampton, but then coming back against Chelsea, getting the kind of start there and then starting again against Bournemouth. Do you think this Ipswich match in game week 20, Joe, is the sort of game Jimenez could start and do well in?
He's the sort of player that I wouldn't mind if he didn't start, because then he would come on. So he could easily get a return in the final 30 minutes or so. And you're often finding that with Fulham, is that if Jimenez or Muniz, whichever one starts, and it's mainly Jimenez at the moment, whichever one starts, they come off at 70 minutes, 65 minutes, and then the other player's got half an hour or so to prove themselves. And Muniz, we've seen score from that. Jimenez, we've seen do that as well. So yeah, he's the kind of rotation risk I wouldn't mind, because you think he should do well. Should get chances, especially against Ipswich. It's an away match as well for them.
Yeah. At the moment, who do you think is on penalties for Fulham? Because Andreas has, I think, taken one before, but do you think Jimenez might have a chance of taking them?
Jimenez has taken them before for them. I would imagine it'd be Jimenez would take them. I don't know. Sometimes with when you get teams like that, like with Crystal Palace as well, so Mateta and Eze are pretty much sharing penalty duties. So when you, as a Mateta owner, Chris, when you see a penalty alert for that game, you're thinking licking your lips, or you're thinking, oh God, it's not going to be him. So you just don't know. It's going to be either a happy or unhappy surprise for you. And I think it's a little bit similar at Fulham as well. I would imagine it would be Jimenez if he's on the pitch, though.
Yeah, no, definitely. Really good shout. And that Ipswich fixture is great. Despite their win against Chelsea, they are a team to target, especially when Fulham are at home. So love that. What's your next pick then, Chris?
So I've gone for Johan Visser from Brentford, basically because of the fixture this week, again, kind of targeting that with Southampton. He has gone a few games with a blank, and obviously that came into my thinking when I sold him in my team last week. But I think he's still a very good player, a good asset to own, and Brentford are a good forward line. So I think he's a good. I think he could return to scoring ways this week.
Yeah, it's interesting with Brentford assets because I think a lot of people have moved off Brian and Bumo, and in that time, as you were saying, Joe, he's just kept on ticking away, getting goals like against Arsenal, and obviously being on penalties. But I think it's a slightly different conversation around Wissa because his minutes aren't just as guaranteed as his. And you've got other options in that Brentford attack that can start or take at least some minutes off Wissa. So, do you think he's good ahead of this Southampton game, or would you think that there are other forwards you could take a punt on?
I think he's good, but the only thing is when I look at differentials, or when I used to sort of pick them for Fantasy Football Scout, and when I talk to Tom Freeman, who still picks them for them,
yeah,
one of our rules is even though they're for that fixture, you're looking at them in a game, with limited transfers, as Fantasy Football Scout is, as Fantasy Premier League is. You've got limited free transfers rather. You really want a player that you're going to be happy with for the next few game weeks. So I tend to look in 4 game week blocks, and I don't think I like Brian Mbomo because he's on penalties, and he's looked better as well. Look, the man who's most threatening in tougher games, and they've got tougher games still to come.
Yeah.
But the fixtures do improve for them. But so I just wouldn't want to double up. So yeah, I mean, looking at the they've got Southampton away, great, but they've got Man City at home, Liverpool at home. See, I don't like going into that with the guy that's not on penalties for a team like that with those fixtures. So that's why I think he's a great pick for this week away to Southampton, even though Southampton's defense has improved. But I don't think he's a good pick for the next 4 or 5. So that's why I personally wouldn't go for him. And that's why I wouldn't say, for example, I mean, Brian Mbomo is not a differential. He's like in 3 in 10 teams. But I would say good differential this week, not so good coming up. Game week 25, Brentford have a lovely run that goes on till game week 30. So that's when I would be looking at, Wissa or Mbomo if he was lesser owned.
Yeah, 100%. But it's all about that Southampton fixture, and he could well do well in game week 20. Okay, and what's your last pick, Chris?
So I'm going to go for Jacob Murphy from Newcastle. Yeah, I think he's been in quite good form recently, and he's kind of started to cement a position on that right-hand side of Newcastle's attack. Still only 4.3% owned. And yeah, Spurs coming up this weekend. We know the defensive kind of problems they've been having recently. And then moving forward from that, the fixtures look pretty good for Newcastle. So I think he's a nice little kind of inroad into that Newcastle team, especially if you're looking to like double up with Isak as well.
Yeah, I like Murphy. We talked about Bruno Guimaraes, who I actually picked on last week, and he was frustratingly blanking in that Man United game, but so did Murphy. But I think with Murphy, it's slightly different, isn't it, Joe? Because he does always get in those really attacking positions. He's quite a
Yeah.
dynamic winger. I guess the question would be, do you think his recent form he's shown, do you think it's sustainable and sort of like long term? Because
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
not usually an asset that would like return over a long period of time, is he?
Well, that's it. I mean, okay. So he's not a fashionable pick, which makes him a perfect differential because the differential is a low owned, and
Yeah.
they're low owned. Even so, Jacob Murphy has been putting in a most amazing returns. Game week 16, 13 points. Game week 17, 13 points. Game week 18, 6 points. Why isn't he in all our teams? He's only 5.1. But he's not. He's in 4.3% of teams currently. And that's because he's just completely unfashionable. Because you're looking at Gordon, you're looking at Isak, you're looking at the big name players, the ones that cost a bit more, and money, influences people's decision. Oh, he costs 9 million. Son is not worth 9.9 million. Yet he's still in people's teams, some people's teams, but yeah, Jacob Murphy is absolutely brilliant, and he's in that bracket like Rodgers, Sarr, a whole bunch of players, Semenyo, who are very attacking, cheap players. That it's going back to that perfect storm again. The higher owned players aren't the higher price players aren't performing. Well, not all of them. Meanwhile, you've got these other slots to fill, and yeah, Jacob Murphy should come in. I think I can't remember which video it was I did, but it was one of the Fantasy Football Scout team reveal ones, and I think we were discussing at the time. Just why isn't Jacob Murphy in all our teams? It's I feel guilty looking at his stats and thinking why haven't I don't have a space for him, and maybe that's the reason. But I think it comes down to that unfashionability, which is why he's a great pick, I think, from Chris, because he ticks all the boxes. He's got a good fixture against Spurs this week, good fixtures coming up for the next 4 or 5 game weeks. Brilliant, cheap form fixtures, everything perfect.
It is looking really nice. I think it is ultimately a thing down to what it comes down to is like slots in your team and availability in your team. Because if you were saying pick 3 Newcastle FPL assets right now, I think more people would say Isak, Gordon, Lewis Hall. So that's probably what it comes down to. It's like, oh, maybe they're not going to pick Murphy over those 3. But as a kind of alternative to save money on a Gordon, who I think, if you've got the money this week, I think the best midfield transfer this week is probably Anthony Gordon against that Tottenham defence. But if you don't have it, then Murphy's a great alternative, I think.
Yeah, and it goes back to money as well. People are obsessed with money, and I see people saying, "Oh, I made that early move for that player. I didn't have a choice. Their price was going up." I said, "Oh, why did you have nothing in the bank?" "Oh no, I've got like 2 million in the bank." And I said, "Well, you did have a choice, and you've chosen to get that player in."
Yeah.
But so, say for example, it was let's say for example, Gordon hadn't got as many points as he had, but I don't think he's got as many points as Murphy recently. If you are priced out of a move, go for the cheaper option. The cheaper option might be better. And in Murphy's case, he is better, but he's not in our teams.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess maybe if he'd have done it in previous seasons, we'd have all been on the Murphy train a little bit more. But it's been a recent development to see how well Murphy's done. So yeah, fair play to Jacob. Okay, that's some great differentials there, Chris. Thanks for those. What are your differentials then, Joe, looking like this week?
Okay, well I've got 3. I've got a midfielder, a striker, and a defender. I'll go with the midfielder first because he's the big name. It's Foden. He's in 5.5% of teams. Well, he was when I wrote this a couple of days
Yeah.
ago. So he's around that. He's got the best minutes per expected goal involvement last 6 game weeks amongst Man City options, every 153 minutes. Haaland is every 157 minutes. He's had 6 shots on target as well. And also in the assists imminent, I do a show called Assists and Goals Imminent, where we look at underlying stats in the last 4 game weeks, those that have been underperforming in real terms, as in they've only scored like a goal or an assist, but their underlying stats say they should have got more, and he should have got more. He's top of the assists imminent table. He has got an assist in his last 4, but he should have got at least another one. And he's had 8 successful crosses, created 11 chances. He's in 9.2. He's pretty cemented in that team. I think he's a strong asset because even though he is expensive, and so this is going to be only for a particular type of manager who's got a setup. But if you are looking for a player and you don't mind spending a bit of money, I think he's a strong asset for this week. And I think he's got he's got reasonable fixtures to come as well. So Gameweek 21 away to Brentford, that's good, and then away to Ipswich. I mean, these are really good fixtures actually. And then Gameweek 23, I'll stop here. But yeah, home to Chelsea. I think that's not too bad for an attacker. So I think he's a punt now. Now is Phil Foden time. I think home to West Ham. That looks good.
Yeah, it does. West Ham have been conceding goals for fun, as we saw against Liverpool. And do you think now is the time where Foden's going to be back to his levels he showed last season, Chris? Because, got his first goal of the season recently against that Aston Villa side, and then his first assist of the season was earlier in the season from that Wolves game, and he got another assist against Leicester. Do you think now is the time he could really start clicking?
Yeah, I really like that pick. I think, as Joe mentioned earlier as well, I think City will start to improve gradually as we kind of move towards end of January, late December, which is a bit unfortunate in the sense that their fixtures start to turn around that time. So, I think he's when we're talking about City assets as well, he's probably alongside Haaland the safest for minutes as well in that attack midfield. So, yeah, I really like it. And with that data that you shared there, Joe, it does sound like he is starting to emerge as kind of a threat, whereas at the start of the season, he was just kind of anonymous most games and kind of having the odd chance here and there. But yeah, I think as City improve, his impact will kind of be seen more. So yeah, I quite like it. And with the fixtures in the next couple of weeks, I think he might be a nice little differential to kind of get in.
100%. I mean, Brentford away is a fixture he's already scored a hat-trick in, so could well be a nice time for Phil Foden. 100%. Great. What's your next pick then, Joe?
Okay. This is a candidate that you could go for, and that's Houston at Bournemouth. So when I was I got Robinson in for Fulham, and I noticed that Fulham and Bournemouth's rotation was really good. And in fact, when they had it was even better than that. You could play both of them some weeks. And this week, as I said, he's actually first on my bench. So I'm partly mitigating his inevitable clean sheet here. So I feel he's an easy win. He's at home to Everton, but he's got goals in him. So yeah, as I said, 2.9% owned. I think a clean sheet is very strong in Gameweek 20. I think his fixtures are pretty reasonable. He does have Chelsea and Newcastle, but then he goes Nottingham Forest as well. I think there's potential there. Potential, not necessarily for clean sheet in the next 4, but certainly for attacking returns. So I had a look at the last 6 game weeks in terms of attacking defenders, and there is only 5. Well, I say only. There's quite a lot of these. There's 5 defenders that have scored 2 goals in their last 6 game weeks, which is really strong for a defender. And of which Houston is one of them. Milenkovic, which is why he's in Chris's side, is another. Chalobah, Crystal Palace. No, he's not in anyone's side. He's another differential. Saliba, people know about him, but he's a bit more expensive. Tariq Lamptey as well. 2 goals. Secretly, Tariq Lamptey scored 2 goals in the last 6 game weeks. No one knew about that, apart from Brighton fans. And also Houston, he's had 4 shots inside the box, created 4 chances, 3 clean sheets in his last 6. And whilst trying to remember who it is who's out at the moment for the Bournemouth defence. Basically, he's nailed in the Bournemouth defence,
isn't it?
Senesi. He's nailed in the Bournemouth defence for a good couple of months or so at least. Also, his minutes per baseline bonus is every 5.6 minutes. He's getting a baseline bonus, which is the metric used to create bonus points. He's really good, and I can't see a way to get him off my bench unless I bench Saar, and I just know what will happen then. So I basically will always favour the attacker over the defender, and I'm just bracing myself there. So I think he's just an easy win.
Yeah, I really like him as potential, replacement for me for Timber. Do you think, Chris, that you would go for him because of his attacking threat, or would you think like a Fulham or a Forest defender is maybe a bit safer for clean sheets? Because Bournemouth, they don't always get clean sheets, do they?
No, that's true. I think in terms of attacking potential, if you're looking between maybe Forest defenders with Milenkovic, Aina, and then Fulham, obviously, it's Robinson, there's probably not much in it, but it maybe is that kind of the defensive stability that might swing it one way or the other for you. I'm not sure. I've not got any kind of underlying data on Bournemouth's defensive performance, but I know offensively they've kind of really underperformed what they should have done. But yeah, I think, it's really difficult. I think he's a good option, and as you say, he's a nice little kind of differential there. So I think any of them really. I know that doesn't really help you, but all three of them are really good options.
Yeah, no, I get it. You're sitting on the fence, but I understand why, because there's no clear answer, I don't think. So I'll have to have a little look into it, but I think most likely it will be Robinson, but we'll have to see what that transfer is. But yeah, I really like that differential, Joe.
It's just worth pointing out there's under home matches this season, Bournemouth are the sixth best defence. Their expected goals conceded is 9.63, which is just below Newcastle and is better than Man City, Chelsea, and Fulham, and Brighton and Everton. But only Arsenal, Liverpool, Villa, Nottingham Forest, Newcastle are better than Bournemouth at home defensively.
Yeah, it's tricky because when I look at those long-term fixtures, I think maybe avoid Huijsen. But then I also think if it's just looking at Gameweek 20 on its own, and I compare Robinson, Milenkovic, and Huijsen, the one I think is most likely to get a clean sheet is probably Huijsen with how Everton are
this week, and then bench him. Get Robinson in. So I've got Robinson and Huijsen for this very reason. I can play well. Annoyingly, this week both of them have good fixtures, so Robinson gets the edge. But then Huijsen, he's happily benched against Chelsea and Newcastle. But then Robinson comes into the side, obviously West Ham, Leicester, and then Huijsen's got Nottingham Forest at home, and that's quite a good defensive fixture. Fulham, they've got Manchester United at home. Well, I don't know. Can Manchester United form assume it picks up a bit? And it goes on like that, really. So Huijsen is one of those players that is good to have in as part of a rotation. But yeah, I'm certainly happy with him.
100%.
His points on my bench.
No, I really like that pick as a differential defender. And then what's your other pick you've got?
Okay, right. This is the one that you're gonna go, what? Okay, Jamie Vardy. He's in 6.7% of teams. And Villa, he's against Villa next. Villa have conceded 12 at home and only kept 2 clean sheets at home so far. So they're okay, but not that good. So they're there for the taking. But also the fixtures, I think, are strong the next 4 for him. So yes, he's got Villa away. They've got Crystal Palace at home, Fulham at home. So 2 home fixtures there. Tottenham away, great. That's a good Vardy fixture. Then it gets a bit tough with Everton away and then Arsenal. So he's good for the next run. No one's going for him because it's Jamie Vardy and he's about 1 million years old. But on the goals imminent table that we had, the show I did with Mark Joblin, which is available on Spotify, by the way, this week. Search for Fantasy Football Scout goals imminent. He is top of the goals imminent table. So that's basically that they could have done much better than they actually have done. And so Jamie Vardy's had 4 big chances. He's missed 3 of them. He scored 1 of them. So he does have 1 goal with the last 4. He should have got, according to the expected stats, he should have got another goal. He's had 14 shots. 13 of those have been inside the box. So he's got the underlying stats. Age is not on his side, but he's Magic Jamie Vardy. And I think he is a good differential for the next 4. And I think for those that have Jamie Vardy in their side and they're getting itchy feet, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to move him on." Well, the stats said he should have done much better, and has at least scored one, and he's really cheap. It's only 5.5. So yeah, he's the one that you won't consider. And I could say it until I'm blue in the face. No one will get them in. And then next week on mine, Mark Joblin's goals imminent show, we'll say, "Hey, look at us. We recommended Jamie Vardy, and he got a goal."
Yeah, it'll be inevitable. Now, Vardy's been one that's actually been picked on our differential section before this season by the likes of Ethan this season, who came on. I think it was Druv earlier on this season. Like, he is just a reliable pick in certain matches, and this is why he's a proven goal scorer. But I think when you look at Leicester's fixtures, that's why he's so unfashionable, that no one's going there at the moment. But I also think that Villa game could be very well suited to him. He loves scoring against the Villa side.
I think for some people, they look at the fixtures and think, "Oh, Leicester can't win that." I don't care if Leicester win or not. If I own Jamie Vardy, I just want him. I just want him to score. So, for example, the Brighton game, I thought, well, that's not a good fixture for Leicester. Well, not only did they manage to snatch a draw, but Jamie Vardy got a haul from that game. And that's the sort of player he is, and that's why he's a good differential. That's why he's not in many teams.
Brilliant stuff. No, I love those differentials, Joe. Thanks for that. My differentials in game week 20, I'm looking to bounce back because I only got one correct returner last week, with Curtis Jones getting an assist in that Liverpool game, and Munoz disappointing for Palace. So I've gone for someone who I think this season is really all about kind of the value. He's actually one of the cheaper assets in that team's attack, and yet he's still been delivering a lot of goals. So it's a Tottenham player, not Dejan Kulusevski. I've instead gone for Brennan Johnson, who, yes, he's had his benching problems, Chris, this season, but the last couple of weeks he's looked really good again, scored another goal in that Wolves game, and ahead of a Newcastle fixture where Fabian Schär will be unavailable with suspension, I think Spurs inevitably score goals every week. 5.7% owned. Do you like the look of Brennan Johnson against that Newcastle defence?
I think for this week, I think obviously Newcastle's defensive numbers have improved in recent weeks, but like you say, missing Schär will have a big impact on kind of their stability, I guess. I like him. I think obviously the main consideration with him is minutes and whether he's going to start every week. I think he is prone to a benching here and there. And that's why I went for Kulusevski instead. But I think, he's quite an explosive asset. When on his day, he can deliver a kind of a double-digit haul, and he's been very consistent so far. So I'm surprised he is still only just under 6% owned, really. But I think, as you say, Spurs seem to score every week, so it's a nice little avenue into probably one of the best attacks in the league. So yeah.
Okay, well, my next pick. See what you think about this one, Joe. He's a player for a Nottingham Forest team that is doing so well at the moment, third in the league, scoring goals, and they've got a great fixture this week up against Wolverhampton Wanderers. So I've gone for a midfielder, and it's Anthony Elanga. Now, I had Gibbs White, I think, in the differentials a few weeks ago. He delivered in that game against Tottenham. But I've gone for Elanga because he's on a run of returning now in the last 4 game weeks, and he's 5.2 million, which is very, very cheap. So do you think he could be one that we could jump on ahead of this Wolves fixture?
I mean, he was very popular sort of game week 1 time. I think in terms of Nottingham Forest at the moment, I think I would go for Gibbs White. So is the reason you haven't said Gibbs White because you've already picked him a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, pretty much.
So in terms of recommending a player to someone else, that's probably not a good enough reason to say don't get that player in because a bloke on a podcast picked him 2 weeks ago.
To be fair, I also factor in the fact that Elanga's, I saw his form a few weeks ago and I thought, I'll just pick Gibbs White. The last couple of matches, I have noticed Elanga being more confident in his current form than I expected him to kind of maintain. So I'm a bit kind of pleasantly surprised, is how I put it, about Elanga, because he's been a bit more consistent than I thought he would be.
No, I think in terms of Nottingham Forest assets, Chris Wood, I would be top. Milenkovic, I would say, would be second. And then it would be a bit of a bum fight between Gibbs White and Elanga. But for me personally, Gibbs White would be the one because he's on the set pieces. And if you've got a player like Chris Wood, you've got goal scoring defenders like Milenkovic, Aina as well. Then I'm just narrowing the odds really, and I would just go for that guy because I've just got more routes to points. However, Elanga, you're restricting yourself to an open play threat. So if Nottingham Forest don't turn it on and decide to become quite defensive, that's him gone. But nevertheless, his open play threat is very strong. So, he's got, 6 points last game, 11 points before that, 9 points before that, 6 points. So he has done well, but so has Gibbs White. He's got 10 points, 6 points. And then, since game week 15, he's got 13-point haul, 8 points against Villa. So, I mean, they are both strong. But Gibbs White is a million more for a reason, and that is just routes to points, and that's what I would go for. But they're both very good differentials, yeah.
Okay, well, that's really helpful advice. Thanks for that, Joe. My last one, I'll see what you guys think about this one. It's a toss-up between two picks. I was thinking about Gabriel Jesus, but as you said, Joe, Havertz missing out. Will that be necessarily the same case ahead of the Brighton game? I'm not sure, but I've ended up choosing instead to go for as my third pick this week. Someone who's very under the radar, because again, a bit like with Brennan Johnson earlier on in the season, he wasn't an option because of rotation. But I think with the current form he's in and the fixture he's got this week, I've gone for a midfielder and not Alex Iwobi. Instead, I'm thinking a bit of Harry Wilson because he's really impressed me these last few weeks. Back-to-back goals against Chelsea and Bournemouth, and played really well in that game against the Cherries. Obviously the fixture is the main factor here, but what's also really nice is not just the price at 5.2 million, Chris. He's 0.7% owned. So if he hauls, then that could be a massive way to kind of get you up your mini league. So what do you reckon about Harry Wilson?
Yeah, it's an uber differential, isn't it? We always like them on this pod. I think he obviously when he's been playing, he's been really delivering some really kind of important contributions. Again, it's like you say, it's similar with Johnson. It's just whether he can kind of maintain a run of games in the starting 11, because at the moment it seems like it's one game in, one game out. But then again, he does seem to make an impact off the bench too. So he's perhaps a bit like Raul Jimenez in the sense that if he does get benched, then he can come on and still do something. So it's not the end of the world if you're not getting those couple of appearance points. So yeah, I quite like it. He's a good player. And with the fixtures coming up, it seems like quite a logical transfer.
Yeah. Do you think Harry Wilson will start the Ipswich game, Joe?
You don't know, and that's why I wouldn't go for him, because I don't know. But having said that, I mean, he is one of those players that if he does come on, he can score. So I think it's him and Duran are the best super subs in the league so far. And so what you're seeing now is the starts, because like with Duran, just before he got suspended, rather, the manager is this player's scoring. So if they keep scoring every time I bring him on, I'm just going to have to start them. So Harry Wilson's next fixture, Ipswich, then he's got West Ham, then Leicester, Manchester United. So it's a really good run of fixtures. So if you didn't see him start and you saw him on the bench, you'd think, great, okay, he's one of the best super subs there are. So I'll take 20 minutes of Harry Wilson. And he's a real last minute goals as well. I think he's good. He's 5.2. He's got to compete against, Rodgers, who can't play this week, but he's got to compete against a lot of other good players in that sort of price bracket. But I think he's a pretty strong differential. He's spectacularly low owned, not even 1%. Like, if you get his goal, you get pretty much 100% of his goal, rather than like if Salah scores, even if you've captained him, you're getting 14% of that return. So, for me, every week you look at you look at Salah getting 32 points as your captain, and then you look at on live FPL how many rank gains that is. It's minimal. Your best, you might get more from 2 points from a Everton defender, than you would from Salah. And so if you're getting a good return, like a 9-point return from a player like Harry Wilson, you're getting all of that in your team. So it's a really big rank. He's a rank rank busting player. Yeah, I really like. I think he's really good. And he's in the team for a reason. Keep scoring.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's in great form. So, yeah, thanks for those differentials. Hopefully, they'll have a bit more success. I mean, Abdul, who came on last week, FPL Salah, he did really well with his Eze and Martinelli both returning, but Solanke blanking in that Wolves game. But yeah, it's interesting at the top of the differentials table. I'm still luckily ahead on 11, but Chris is just behind me on 10. And then Jason, who got 3 when he came on, he's still joint third with Ethan on 3. But everyone else, 2, 1, and 0. So if you can get 3 out of 3, then it's very impressive, 100%. Okay, well, that's our differentials. What we're going to do now is look at the mini league and how that kind of got affected by Game Week 19's results. Now, I have to say, Chris, fair play, congratulations, because you've not just gone top of the Formers Temporary head-to-head league, you've also gone top of my own FPL Yellow Army mini league. You're absolutely smashing it at the moment. Ahead of Game Week 20, you're top in both leagues, and you had a really, really nice win in your head-to-head game this week. I mean, 85 points was always going to give you a good chance, but you beat Grida Duma 85-70. Just how do you feel? Because the main thing to say is that for once, Olajide has slipped up against Matthew Yates, 88-73 to Matthew. So it means you have finally, for the moment at least, dethroned Olajide. How do you feel?
Yeah, it's been a long time kind of on his coattails, hasn't it? And I saw he had Wood and Hall on his bench, which is a bit agonising. But yeah, no, pretty pleased. Yeah, it's been quite a lucrative Christmas spell, really, with the points being so high. I've been quite fortunate that I've owned the right players at the right time, really. But yeah, can't rest on our laurels because I'm sure Olajide will come back strong, and even the gap is closing between me and him. Second and third. So yeah, it's so interesting. I love the format of the head-to-head league. So it's just chaos, really. But we'll see how it goes in the second half of the season.
Yeah, 100%. I actually helped you out a little bit by beating Darwizzy Daniel, who's in third. Yeah, 94-74 win for me, which was very key to see me move up to 12th. But at the bottom, it's still, the kind of same 3 we've had. Actually, Sugar D has moved up. So he was kind of part of the bottom 3. But now it's in 26th, FPL Ullen on 21 points, then deleted player in 27th. And then at the bottom, Uncle Napoli still with 15 points. So, yeah, it's a little bit more of a kind of gap in the points there at the bottom, but very still tight between you and Ollie. Just 2 points going into Game Week 20. And we'll see if Darwizzy can kind of close that gap of 7 points up to you, Ollie Ide. But, yeah, really interesting. We'll see how it gets on next week. So then what we're going to now do is looking at some listener questions we've been sent in, Joe. So we'll ask a few of those to you first, if that's okay. The first thing I've got to mention is something really interesting which I've seen. You're bringing in Isak ahead of Game Week 20, and there's been a bit of a curse of the most transferred in players recently.
Yeah,
it seems that Isak is the one who's managed to lift that curse, because in the last few weeks, he's been the one most transferred in 3 times, 19, 18, and 16, and in all those game weeks he's returned. And that all the other players around him have all blanked. So it shows that maybe Isak is just essential at this point.
Well, no, yeah, I mean, he's a really strong player to get in. He's the best after, I say after Cunha, but yeah, he's best option for me to bring in. But his ownership's so high. So luckily for me, a lot of the other players like Cunha, Chris Wood, and Brian Mbomo. So I haven't. The rank loss by not having Isak has been more than made up by my other players, so I've been happy with that. To be honest, I don't care what he does. If anything, I hope I ruin him. So I'll be getting him in. He was 85% owned, I think, the last game week. Effective ownership, rather, that is around my rank. So he's in about half the teams. But he's effectively, because of around the ownership around my rank, he is, pretty much, getting on for nearly 9 out of 10 teams. So for me, he's a shield pick. So it's something I've talked about before, the swords and shields. You get, we just had the swords, the differentials. There you rank game ones. Your shields, you just avoid getting a massive rank fall. And Isak is in that category. So if he gets 10 points against Spurs, I at my rank will be getting effectively a tenth of that into my team. But if he blanks, then that's fine as well, because he's in most people's teams, so everyone goes down together. So I don't care what he gets. If anything, as I said, I hope I ruin him for everyone else.
Well, fair enough. No, I respect it. It's a fair point you make. So the first question we've got, I'll throw this over to you first, Chris, and then we'll see what Joe thinks about it. With Cunha injured and he's now been confirmed banned, who do you think is the best striker replacement over the next 6 game weeks? So it's a bit of a long-term sort of question, but there's some great options, potentially we could bring in. The likes of Gakpo with Man United, Forest, Brentford, Ipswich, Bournemouth and Wolves on the horizon. Chris Wood, who has Wolves, Liverpool, Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton and Fulham. And then Ollie Watkins, who obviously is a bit more of a short-term punt, but maybe he could keep his place with his recent 12-pointer. We'll see if he can kind of carry on that momentum. But Leicester, Everton, Arsenal, West Ham, Wolves and Ipswich, some great fixtures there for Watkins. So who would your replacement be for the likes of Cunha out of those 3?
Well, first of all, thank you, FPL Sharp, because this is pretty much the exact same question I have going into this week. And yeah, I'll be interested to see your guys' kind of thoughts on this kind of trio, which one is the best to go for. I think, like FPL Shark says, that I don't think it is clear cut. I mean, Wood throughout the season has shown that consistency. But I've said it for the last few weeks, and it's not really materialised, and I've looked silly. But I think Forest are kind of overperforming in terms of their offensive numbers, and a lot of their attacking threat does rely on set pieces and kind of the second balls from that. And in open play, they're not actually. I might be wrong in the last couple of weeks, but in the last previous to that, it was looking a bit more like their kind of attacking numbers were dwindling a bit. But Wood is still, despite that, he's so clinical that perhaps it doesn't matter if he only gets 1 chance or 2 chances in a game. He's going to get those points as he did against Everton. So, yeah, I really like Gakpo, to be honest. I think he is going under the radar a bit. And I think traditionally he has been a pick that has been avoided in Liverpool's forward line because he isn't a reliable source of minutes usually. But he started the last 6 Premier League games, albeit he has been subbed a couple of times fairly early around the hour mark. But he has been very consistent, and I think he is starting to nail down that left wing position. And we're seeing with Diaz now kind of moving centrally, it looks like Slot is trying to find a position for Gakpo in the team. And even now with Jota back, I think he's not actually took his position yet. I mean, that could happen in the next few weeks, but we'll have to see. And the fixtures are good for Gakpo with that potential double game week looming large as well, if you want to kind of triple up on Liverpool assets. So, yeah. And then Watkins, like you said, is kind of the short-term pick. But he could really do damage in those 2 game weeks and really boost your rank if you don't own him. So, yeah, I think all 3 are so good. Again, I'm sitting on the fence, but I really like Gakpo as a bit of a differential, to be honest.
Interesting. What do you think about that then? What would your favourite be of those 3, Joe?
It was Chris Wood. He's in my team. He's the one in my team, so he's the one I would back. Yeah, he can score against anyone. That, as Chris said, their play is built around those set pieces. While their defenders keep scoring, while Chris Wood keeps scoring, and he got an assist as well the weekend, so he's got more routes to points there. He's got the pedigree. So if you're a real stat nut and you want like years and years worth, he's been doing it for teams for ages. They've done it for my side, Brighton, Bristol City, Newcastle, Burnley. It just goes on, and he's always delivering. So he's just really reliable. He's cheap as well. You're not going to want to triple up you're not going to want more than 3 Nottingham Forest players in your team, so he doesn't take up a place. Whilst I like Gakpo, and I think he is favoured as on the left, you've got Diaz still. Diaz and Jota and Darwin Núñez seem to be competing, but that doesn't mean that Gakpo won't miss out. The problem I have with Gakpo is it's not the fixtures. Liverpool are great. They're the best team at the moment. Manchester United, Nottingham Forest, Brentford, Ipswich, Bournemouth, Wolves, great fun of fixtures. It's we've got to think ahead to the impending double game week for Liverpool, which will be in game week 24, 25.
Yeah.
And those that have not, or those that have already used their triple captaincy chip, which includes me, I'll be looking to use the assistant manager chip then on slot, and that takes up a Liverpool space. So if let's assume everyone's got Salah. Let's assume everyone is either owns or is Trent Alexander curious, or at least Liverpool defense curious.
Yeah.
Then you've got to leave a slot. So you need a slot for slot. So that's what I'm thinking. So Gakpo for me isn't just, Gakpo's great. It's, Gakpo could block me from getting on. I really want that assistant manager chip for him. And slot looks good around that double game week for that. So that's the problem I have with Gakpo. And so Wood doesn't have any question marks for me, but Watkins does as well. Duran had replaced him. So when Duran's back, maybe Watkins will keep his place, but then the fixtures turn. I actually think, it's easy to say on the back of a 12-point haul, but I thought last week was Watkins' time because of that combination of two fixtures. His form against Brighton, and indeed got another haul, and he's against Leicester at home. Brilliant. I think these are good, strong Watkins fixtures. Then you got Everton away, tougher, Arsenal away. So he's really short term. So I think Watkins is a problem in the future. You might bask in his points against Leicester, but you're not going to get them going on. And Gakpo as well could become a problem with the assistant manager chip if you choose to use it then. Or but if you're going to use your triple captain, say around the double game week, then get Gakpo in. I think that could be quite good. Gakpo, Salah, and Trent Alexander-Arnold in a double game week for Liverpool. That sounds good.
No, I think I agree with a lot of that logic, Joe. I think I would personally pick Wood as well. I just think let's try and reduce the problems we have going forward, and Wood is just a no-nonsense, you know what you're going to get sort of player. But I think with Gakpo, I prefer Luis Diaz if you're picking a Liverpool attacker outside Salah. Maybe it's a bit biased. I've got him, the Colombian, but I think maybe for minutes going forward, I know Gakpo will play most minutes, but I think maybe with Diaz having that option of playing, as the striker as he did against West Ham or on the left, I don't know if Gakpo's as versatile as that, so maybe he'll get a few less minutes than you'd want him to get. So I think Chris Wood is the one for me. But those are our thoughts on that question. Thanks for sending it in, FPL Shark. A really interesting discussion. The next thing I had to mention was I have got a few New Year's resolutions, so I'm going to read them out. First of all, don't ever sell Isak again in my FPL team, because the time I did sell him for Jackson, I missed out on 6 goals and 2 assists compared to Jackson's 2 benchings and a single goal. So very simple. I'm not selling Isak unless he is in an ambulance, honestly. The next one, Lewis Hall. Don't bench me in your FPL team. Never again, all right? He's just going to haul, so just keep playing Lewis Hall. Also, buy back another Forest defender, because since I sold Ola Aina at the start of the season, I sold him in Game Week 6's wildcard. He's had 6 clean sheets, 2 goals, and 10 bonus. So a Forest defender could be on the horizon. But another question we got sent in, I'll see what you think of this one, Chris, from Angus Scott 1, was what must-have players do you think we need? Now, we've already talked about Isak. Do you think there's others outside of Isak?
I mean, I'm assuming he will own Salah and Palmer, who are probably almost essential at this point. Well, they are essential. Outside of that, I think there's a lot of scope for kind of variation in teams. And I think that's one of the beauty of this year. There's not been kind of a standard team that's kind of emerged. It's been a lot of kind of differentials around those premium midfielders. I think, tell me much players. I think Gabriel and at least one Arsenal defender. Timber, obviously, he's got his suspension, but after that, I think again he becomes a good asset. So I think Arsenal defenders, Liverpool defenders, maybe Trent might emerge as a must-have in the next few weeks. We'll have to see. His price probably prevents that. I think the key ones obviously are Salah and Palmer. And then Isak now as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. I think those three of Isak, Palmer, and Salah are the inverted commas essential players. But as a lot of content creators will say, Joe, no player is ever essential if
No.
you can find ways of distributing the money
Yeah,
around
yeah,
your
they're
team.
not. There's not. It's about Isak. I haven't got Isak during that period, but I've gone up 100k over Christmas during his flurry of returns because other players have returned. So no one is essential. They're very desirable players. But yeah, I agree with Chris and you as well with Palmer, Salah, Isak are very, very desirable players to have because in that you've got three good captains, Salah particularly. And then, yes, I think Gabriel for Arsenal. I think he's still the best defender for Arsenal. Alexander Arnold, I think, is still the best defender for Liverpool. And then you've got these array of cheaper defenders. So none of them are must-haves. But Houston, I mentioned Robinson, Milenkovic. Even just having those three and Gabriel and Alexander Arnold, you can just forget about your defense. You don't need to make a defense transfer, perhaps ever. Well, until you got double game weeks.
Yeah.
And so I would say a must-have player isn't a player; it's a price point, and that price point is that 4.5 defender. You can get good two of them, and you can play them, and they can haul as Lewis Hall has.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Salah is as near as you can get to must-have. I don't think Palmer's a must-have. And I don't think Saka was. A lot of people didn't. I thought Saka was a good player to own, whilst he was obviously fit and working. But he's not a must-have.
Yeah.
But I think Salah's probably it. The rest are very, very highly desirable players to own.
Yeah, I think you have to be flexible, and a point you make about the price points, I think, is really, really important. It's about the structure of your team, and the great thing about this season, as we've seen, is there's no kind of dominance of premium assets getting all the points. There's cheaper players we can get instead. So yeah, it's nice to have that flexibility. And my last New Year's resolution then is don't buy Manchester United players for your FPL team, as at the moment at least they're not very good. So Ahmad, he is having a stay of execution. Let's hope he can start to get more returns in the coming weeks. But those are our differentials and our listener questions. We had one more just to answer before we get into the quiz, which we always love to do to end the pod. And it came from a good friend of the kind of pod, Blue Dan, and he asked, would you say, Joe, you favour a strong midfield or a strong forward line for the next 4 to 5 game weeks?
Blue Danube guy. So it's Danube, as in the river. Yeah. I think. Okay. Well, yeah. And enough of his name. If a strong midfield or a strong forward line is more important in the next 4 or 5 game weeks. Okay. So my favourite option in all these types of questions is moderation. Is to have strength in defense, midfield, and forwards, but also have good, cheaper assets. We have good, cheap assets. We have good, cheap forwards. We have good, cheap midfielders. We have good, cheap defenders. Why not have them? So I advocate a combination of all of those. And this season you can have a really expensive. You can have Isak and Chris Wood. So you've got massive change there. In midfield, you can have, Morgan Rogers. We talk about Ahmad as well, and then you can have Palmer and Salah. And then in defence, you've got the likes of Robinson, who's the best assister amongst defenders, alongside Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's worth much more.
Yeah. Do you think you'd agree with that, Chris? Having a balance, there isn't one midfield or forward line that you'd say is more important than the other.
Yeah, especially this season. I think being able to distribute the funds kind of flexibly across your different parts of your team is probably more paramount than ever. I mean, obviously, we've had the last couple of seasons with Haaland just kind of rewriting the record books, hasn't he, with the kind of returns he's been getting. So, yeah, I think it's definitely changed this year. And if you can have that balance, it's really valuable, especially, well, we've kind of gone past the chaotic Christmas period, but when there are games in midweek and there's kind of a short turnaround between fixtures, you need that kind of flexibility, not just in your starting lineup, but also across your whole squad, so that you're able to kind of cope if a player does get a benching or some sort of injury or suspension. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of be adaptable, really.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned midweek deadlines. Obviously, there's going to be one for Game Week 21, so we've got to watch out for that on the 14th of January. But before we get onto the quiz, Joe, one last question I had for you. Haaland did score in the Leicester game. How many goals do you think Haaland needs to score for us to start considering him again as an option because of his price?
Well, even early on when he was getting those hat tricks, Salah was also matching him for points. So if you had both, good. But I think with his ownership, people aren't going to go back there in their droves anymore. So if Haaland does well, I don't care because he's only in he's not in any of my rivals' teams. He might be in a couple more, and then if he keeps doing it, but then the fixtures turn. I don't think Man City are functioning. For what has happened in the last few years is they haven't, for obviously for regulatory reasons and also because they've been fielding a strong 11, they haven't really built their squad. So you've only got Haaland up front. You know, they had Alvarez, just got rid of him. You know, they've had Palmer on their books, got rid of him. You know, what they could do with these players, Delap, they got rid of.
Yeah.
Tearing it up at Ipswich. They're getting rid of these players because they've stuck with that same sort of 11. But then you take away a massively vital cog like the best player in the world, Rodri, and suddenly it all falls apart. And I can't see how that can change. And that's not a case of a new manager at all, because he's a really great manager. It's just they do not have the personnel. So, you know, they're reliant on Rodri. What happens when he's not there? Well, they fall apart. They've been reliant on De Bruyne for creativity. Well, he's not the player he was because he's not starting. He's injured. They're protecting him. You're running Haaland into the ground. You know, bless him. He's going for it every game. His expected stats are still huge. But long answer. It doesn't matter what he gets. I don't care anymore. Say he gets a hat trick in the next 3 games. So gets a hat trick against West Ham. Ooh, people are interested. Hat trick against Brentford. Ooh, hat trick against Ipswich. Ooh, everyone's really interested. So his ownership's going up and up and up. Say 10%, 15%. And then, I'm talking about around your rankings, you know, amongst engaged managers. Well, then he's got Chelsea at home, Arsenal away, Newcastle, Liverpool. He goes straight into like the worst 4 fixtures you can have. So, I don't care what he gets.
Yeah, it is interesting this time of the season, though, because in the next 3 fixtures, Chris, he will be facing the only 3 teams that he's got double-digit hauls against this season. And obviously 2 of those teams being teams he scored hat-tricks against. So maybe it's just a superstitious thing to think he'll suddenly turn back to scoring hat-tricks in these next few. But it's hard to justify, because I think he does need to score at least 2 goals in every game to justify 14.8 million, right?
That's exactly it. It's a relief, isn't it, if he gets those 2 goals or those 2 contributions in the game. Otherwise, it really is a massive disappointment owning a player of that kind of price level and him not delivering. And it's just, despite him getting the odd goal here and there in the last couple of weeks, I'm not sure that justifies kind of moving around your team, because it's not just going to be a single transfer, is it? You've got to kind of really switch around your whole team. And I think with the way that City are playing, like Joe said, at the moment, I'm not sure it's something you can justify so far. Perhaps if they do some business in January and they start to improve, but then, like Joe said, their fixtures then go on a downturn. So I think he's not one to consider in the short term, I don't think, really. Maybe if people are thinking of maybe wild carding later, like game week 29, 30, around then, depending on his form and City's form, then he might be an option to kind of bring back in. But it's very difficult to get him back now for people who've sold him. So, yeah.
I think it feels like too much surgery. So
Yeah,
yeah, really
I think
interesting.
he's a good player if you own him. If you, because I've seen a few people on social media, they've looking forward to their Haaland points. They've got them. But I mean, wow. I mean, you're very patient. But what you're also doing, you're taking away the captain. Say you really favour him and you want to captain him. You're taking that captaincy away from Salah at home to Manchester United, or perhaps when Haaland faces Ipswich. On the worst case scenario, like on the back of 2 hat tricks facing Ipswich, a lot of people might be tempted to get him in and captain him. Well, then you're missing out on Mo Salah captaincy against away to Brentford,
Yeah,
which could be more. So
100%.
yeah, this is all bunch of reasons, and also we're conditioned psychologically with the game. I do like the sort of the gameplay aspect of this. To fear Haaland, you don't own Haaland. Oh, I fear him. But as I said, if he gets a hat trick and he's 100% owned, therefore he's captained by, you'll get 180% effective ownership. You've got nearly 2 Haalands worth of points against you, and you don't own him. That's scary. But if you've got hardly anyone owns him and he gets a hat trick, well, then that's just a bloke getting a hat trick. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. Now, I think that's really good points you make. So thanks for that discussion on the big Norwegian. Okay, now it's quiz time. So what we do for this, Joe, is we always have like a buzzer noise that each of our guests come on and think up. So it could be like a word or a phrase, something that you can use as your buzzer noise. So what are you fancying this week, Joe?
What should be my buzzer noise?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It could be
I hadn't
anything
really
like Brighton related if you wanted it to be.
What shall I just say? Seagulls.
Why not? It works, and it's nice and snappy. Okay, what about you then, Chris?
I was expecting a seagull noise there, Joe, for your buzzer noise.
No. Luckily, I don't live in Brighton anymore. In that, I don't actually have to hear the seagulls anymore.
Oh, good. I'm going to go, perhaps not appropriately, after his blank the last week, King Cole.
King Cole. Okay, no, I like it. As a Chelsea fan, you're sticking with him. Okay, well, the first round is a little thing we like to call, Joe, lineup listing. So lineup listing is as simple as I'll give you 2 matches. We'll do it the first one and then the second one. They're historical matches in Premier League history of recent times. And what I want you to do is go through either one of the teams, their full 11 starting that match. I'm going to give you the numbers of that squad playing on that day. And I see if you can complete that one team, you can choose whichever team you want to do, then you get the point. But the way it will work is it's one person at a time, and if anyone gets it wrong, it passes to the next person. Ooh. It'll be you'll get it as we go along. So the first fixture for you is Newcastle 2, Manchester City 3. This was January last season, so last January 2024, 3-2 to Manchester City. You might remember it was a late winner in that game. Not going to say who it was for, but there was a late winner in that game for Manchester City. So I would first of all like to say, here are the numbers, and buzz in when you think you can have a go at either one of Newcastle or Manchester City. Here are the numbers for, firstly, Newcastle, and then Manchester City. Any buzzing in for either of those sides?
So have we got to name all of them or just one? Or just keep going?
Go through the team. That's how you get the full point. So if you fancy either one of Newcastle or Man City, any of you 2, buzz in when you think you do.
King Cole.
Okay, Chris has gone for it. Newcastle or Man City?
I'm liking some of the numbers in that Newcastle team. That'll be a bit of a challenge. So I think go Newcastle.
Okay, Newcastle.
Try it out.
What are you thinking?
Okay, so I'll go from goalkeeper to striker. Number 1 must. Oh, actually, it was Pope. No, I'll go Pope. He was injured for a bit there, wasn't he? But I think number 1's Pope.
Okay, number 1.
Wrong?
I'm afraid is incorrect. It was not Nick Pope. So it passes back to you, Joe. Do you want to carry on Newcastle or you can go Man City?
Was it Dubravka?
Okay, you've gone for Dubravka. That is correct. So it's still with you, Joe. You can choose any other Newcastle player.
Dan Burn.
Dan Burn, number 33, is correct.
Cher.
Fabian Schär, number 5. Very well done. What do you
Trippier.
think? Trippier, yeah, number 2 is correct. You've nearly got all of the back line there.
How many have I gone for? Trippier. Who have I got for? Just remind me who I've said. Trippier, Cher, Burn, and so it's number.
Who are you thinking?
Botman.
Ah, yes, well done. Sven Botman, number 4. That is correct. Do you fancy anyone else?
Okay, Isak. Number 10.
Isak, yeah, safe. It is actually number 14, Alexander Isak, but that is
Oh,
correct.
is it?
Yeah.
Gordon.
Anthony Gordon is correct, number 10. Well done. Just a few
Joe
more
Ellington.
left. Joe Ellington, I'm afraid, is incorrect. He was not in that team. So it passes back to Chris. Do you want to finish off Newcastle or go to Man City?
I'll go for Newcastle, please. That's surprising,
Okay.
Joe Linton. He must have been
He must have been injured or
suspension
something.
injury.
Yeah.
As he
God,
never misses a minute.
Yeah.
Afraid so. So, Chris, what are you fancying?
I think 67. I don't know why. I always remember the bizarre shirt numbers, but I'm pretty sure that's Lewis Hall.
Lewis Hall is incorrect, I'm afraid.
What?
It passes back to Joe. Joe's got a chance to redeem himself.
Bruno. Oh, no, hang on a sec. No, scratch that. I think he might have been injured. Oh, no, I'm going to say anyway. Bruno Guimaraes.
Bruno Guimaraes is correct, number 39. Well done.
Oh, I'm going to say Almiron.
And you would be correct, number 24, Miguel Almiron.
I remember because they had a lot of injuries, and I remember Almiron getting. So we've got Gordon, Isak,
I can tell
Almiron.
you, if you want to know how many you've still got to get, it's just 2 more players.
And that's which numbers?
67 and 36.
Elliot Anderson.
Elliot Anderson, I'm afraid, is incorrect.
Oh.
So it's back to Chris. You've got 2 more players to get, Chris.
That's really thrown me. That might have been his number at Chelsea. 67. Lewis Hall. 36. I think is Longstaff.
Yes, very well done. Sean Longstaff is correct. So it's down to 67 for Chris.
The only stab in the dark. I don't know, like you said, Joe, with the injuries. Was this the time when Lewis Miley was playing?
I can, in fact, confirm that is correct.
Well done. That's good. That's good.
Very well done. Yeah, great job. Lewis Miley was number 67. So, yeah, did very, very well there. So I can, in fact, reveal that Man City's team was fairly, as you'd expect, the likes of Ederson, Walker, Diaz, Ake, Vardiol, Rodri, Kovacic, Foden, Bernardo Silva, Doku, and, of course, Alvarez, because that was a time that Haaland was out injured. So, yeah.
So we could have made life so much easier for ourselves.
Probably. But anyway, that's what you chose. So fair play, Chris. Very well done. So that's 1-0 to Chris heading into the next question. The next game for you to do is a game between the likes of Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. It was this season. So 14th of September 2024. The only game Liverpool have lost this season. Liverpool 0, Nottingham Forest 1. So, firstly, here are the Liverpool numbers, and then the Nottingham Forest numbers. Anyone buzzing in, give it a go.
Seagulls.
Okay, Seagulls. Joe, what are you thinking?
I'll try Liverpool.
Okay, Liverpool is first up. What are you thinking for Liverpool?
Alisson.
Alisson is correct. Very well done.
Alexander-Arnold.
Alexander-Arnold is correct.
Canate
is very well done. Correct. Number
Van
5.
Dijk.
Yep, number 4. Correct.
I'm just going to skip 26. Szoboszlai.
Dominic Szoboszlai is correct. Number 8.
Luis Diaz.
Yes. Number 7, Luis Diaz.
Suarez. Salah.
Mo Salah, of course. Number 11. Any more?
So like the last one, I'm getting the bulk of them, and then I'm just handing points to Chris for the last ones. McAllister.
Alexis McAllister is a good shout. Number 10, yes. At the moment, you're missing.
Okay, this is the bit I'm gonna. It's almost like deliberately getting it wrong, but I've got a feeling it was Robertson.
That is correct. Number 26 is
it wasn't
Robertson. Very well done.
So who am I left? Who am I left with?
Your number 38 and number 20.
Graven thing back. Yeah.
Graven.
I can't remember his name because I never pick him. Graven back, is it?
I'll give you that. You're very close.
Yeah.
Graven Birch.
Graven Birch, that's it. Yeah, because I never pick him. You see these names, you just think.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever mentioned him in any podcast.
Okay, you're down to your final one then. Number 20.
Which is.
Oh, you're so close.
I know, and I'm gonna. It's a 50-50 call.
Oh, it's a tight one.
I'm gonna say Gakpo.
Gakpo is incorrect. It's back to Chris.
I knew it.
On the last one. So, can you get number 20, Chris?
I feel terrible.
I've just got all of them, and then you're just gonna nick it.
That's the cruel nature.
Oh,
that's the cruel nature of lineup listings. You can choose which team you want, but all the work's been done for you.
Yeah, I feel I'm going to go Forest. Let's go Forest.
Oh, that's a very, very good sportsmanship. I like it, Chris. Very well done. Well, Nottingham Forest. This is the numbers you can go for.
Okay. Sells?
Matt Sells is correct. Number 26.
Oh, 34 is... I'm guessing Aina, but I could be wrong.
You would be correct. 34 is Aina.
Milenkovic.
Yep, number 31.
Murillo.
Murillo is number 5. Very well done.
Alex Moreno.
Yes, number 19 is Alex Moreno.
22 is Yates, I think.
Yes, Ryan Yates. Very well done.
Okay, this is where it'll get a bit tricky. 18. Is that Dominguez? Dominguez
is a correct answer. So you carry on, but he's number 16.
Right. Okay, that makes it a bit challenging with 18 then. Gibbs White.
Morgan Gibbs White, number 10. Yes, very well done.
Chris Wood.
Chris Wood, number 11, of course.
Oh, number 8. Who's number 8? So this is this season?
Yep, this is this season.
Is that Anderson? Elliot Anderson?
It is. Elliot Anderson is number 8. Yes, very well done. So you're down to your last.
Oh, no. I think I'm going to be in the same position as
this would be great. 18.
Surely one of Elanga or Hudson-Odoi started that game. Or did they just go full park the bus? And because they've got no wingers in that team, do they, really? 18. I don't think it is, though. I'm going to go Elanga, but I think that's wrong.
Anthony Elanga is incorrect, I'm afraid. Yeah. So we've got a situation here where you've both got one left. Joe, right. Do you want to stick with your original Liverpool or do you want to snatch Forest?
No, I'll go with Liverpool.
Okay, we're going to go back to Liverpool then. Can you get this number 20 for Liverpool?
Darwin Núñez.
Darwin Núñez is incorrect, I'm afraid.
Oh,
it goes back to Chris. Chris, Liverpool or Forest?
Oh, steal it from me.
Yeah, I know the Liverpool one, so I feel like I should go for that.
Fair enough.
As bad as it feels.
No, it's all good.
Just do it. Just do it.
Just to put you out of misery, I'm going to go Diogo Jota.
Yes.
Yes, and that is correct.
I think that's fair after I got 2 attempts at that one wrong. Didn't know the number.
No,
so I think that's fair.
you did very
that
well.
becomes fair with me getting it wrong again.
Chris, you did very well to go all the way through Forest, and when you had the chance of going for Jota, and you chose not to, very sportsmanlike. So no, well done, Chris. 2-0 to Chris.
Who was
going
number
into
18, by the way, Roberto? Sorry to
number
interrupt.
18. No, it's all right. I know you were racking your brains at that one, but for Nottingham Forest this season, number 18, James Ward-Prowse.
What? Oh wow!
They did go quite defensive, yeah.
They did, but they still managed to get the win. So fair play to Nuno Espirito Santo for that one. Right, okay. That means it's 2-0 heading into the next round of the quiz. And the next round of the quiz is a little thing called career paths. So what I'm going to do for this is list clubs that a Premier League player, current or previously past Premier League player, has played at. And you've got to buzz in with your buzzer and give a guess of who this football player is, okay?
Sorry, what was it? Repeat that again. Sorry,
I'll repeat. So I'm going to list clubs this player has been at. They're
Right.
either
I
a
see.
former or current Premier League player, and you've got to tell me through this kind of sequence of clubs which player it is. So 2-0 to Chris. Let's see how it goes in the third question. The first career path we've got for you. It started off at Arsenal, then on loan to Brentford, then on loan to Roma, then Juventus, and then Barcelona. I'll repeat those again. Arsenal, on loan to Brentford, on loan to Roma, then Juventus, and then Barcelona. You have any ideas, guys? Chris seems to be thinking
King
away.
Cole.
Oh, he's gone for it.
Is it Thomas Vermaelen?
Thomas Vermaelen's not a bad shout, but it's incorrect, I'm afraid. So that means you're momentarily frozen out. So you've got a free hit at this, Joe. If we don't get this, then we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah.
You might be in the right sort of ballpark with your guess, Chris. So if that at all helps you, Joe, I don't know.
Doesn't exactly narrow it down.
No, it's the Brentford one through me.
Yeah, think about the player that Chris picked, Joe. Like the same ballpark. So think about the clubs that player was at. That hopefully shouldn't give it on a plate.
No, I don't know. I'm not going to go for this.
You going to give up?
Yeah.
Okay, well, no one gets it, I'm afraid. The answer was Wojciech Szczesny.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it was a very surprising loan at Brentford. Not many people knew about that, but yeah, he went to Roma on loan after that, then Juventus, and most recently Barcelona. So yeah, you very much hit the post there, I think, with that one, Chris. Unlucky, but it stays 2-0 to Chris. The next career path then started off at Southampton, moved to Liverpool, then on loan at Bournemouth, and then Crystal Palace. Any guesses?
Can you repeat it again?
Yeah, I can repeat it. Southampton at first, then Liverpool, went on loan to Bournemouth, and more recently, Crystal Palace. These career paths are tricky this week.
They are. And so many players have made that switch, haven't they, from Southampton to Liverpool?
Yeah.
So
there was that year they just signed Southampton, didn't they?
Yeah, literally.
Any ideas, guys?
King Cole.
Okay, Chris?
The only stab I've got is Jordan Ibe, but I think
Jordan Ibe, I'm afraid, is incorrect. So once again, you're frozen out. Joe, you've got a chance here. Any Southampton to Liverpool players you're thinking of?
There's too many of them. So what was it? It was then it was to
on loan at Bournemouth, and then to Palace. I can see the cogs.
Nathaniel Klein.
Nathaniel Klein is correct. Well done. You've got it. Well done. Very well done. You've pulled one back. It's 2-1 to Chris. Very well done. Yeah. That was an interesting one, but yeah, you did really well to kind of work that one out. So Yeah, means it's really interesting going into the last question of the quiz, which is hot potato. So we like to play this game called hot potato, where you pass answers between each other. It's basically the first person to slip up, the other person gets the point. So it's 2-1, Chris, heading into this final question. And if Joe gets this, then we're going to need a sudden death question. I'm going to have to try and find it, but we'll see. Let's see if that's what comes to it. So, at the weekend, Son Heung-min had a penalty saved by Jose Sarr. So, what I want to ask you is players who have taken a penalty in the Premier League this season. They don't have to have scored that penalty, just players to have taken a penalty this season in the Premier League. And being our guest, Joe, this week, we'll let you go first. So, any player that's taken a penalty in the Premier League this season, what's your first one?
Salah.
Mohamed Salah is correct. Chris?
Haaland.
Haaland is correct. Back to Joe.
Saka.
Bukayo Saka is correct. Back to Chris.
Palmer.
Cole Palmer, of course. And back to Joe.
Odegaard.
Martin Odegaard. Good shout. Very well done. And back to Chris.
Kluivert.
Justin Kluivert. Very good shout. Back to Joe.
So what was your first one before Kluivert?
This is the part of the game you should hopefully remember.
I see. So if I say
can't
the same,
repeat. You can't repeat, I'm afraid.
Oh my god! So it's a memory game.
Yeah,
which is a real test for me. Pedro.
Joao Pedro is correct. Or is he? No, he's not.
He hasn't actually got one.
He hasn't. So I'm afraid Chris gets the point.
Oh no.
So that means he's won 3-1. You know what it is? I looked at the answer sheet. I looked up and down it. And in my head, I thought Pedro had. And
yeah, I'm sure we got at least one. I'm sure we got at least one. Because
he's not taken one or scored one this season, I'm afraid.
Have Brighton had a penalty this season?
I don't think they have.
He's usually, last season, he was amazing at winning penalties.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, that is the quiz this week. Well done again for getting back to normality, Chris. Another win for you in the quiz. Very well done, 3-1. But yeah, good, fun, close one, that one. So good effort, Joe.
Yeah, I'm fairly pleased with that. I got a point.
No, it's not easy to get a point off Chris in this quiz, to be honest. So yeah, very well done.
Got Nathaniel Klein to thank for that.
Good old Nathaniel Klein, gotta love him. No, that's where we're going to wrap up the pod this week. We were talking about the kind of replacement for Cunha, and I just looked at my notes and I remembered that Gakpo is on 4 yellow cards. So if he does get booked in the game for Liverpool coming up against Manchester United, then he will miss a game with a 5-match suspension. So let's hope he gets through that Man United game. But after that, of course, he could be a great asset for you to pick. But we're going to wrap up the pod. So absolutely, thank you, Joe, for coming on.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate it, and hope you've enjoyed.
Yeah, pleasure. Really enjoyed that.
Great stuff. And where people, I'm sure they already are following you on social media and, of course, watching Fantasy Football Scouts YouTube videos. But if people aren't already following you, where can people do that?
They can find me on Blue Sky at FPL Joe. Blue Sky, whatever it is, B Sky, whatever. But yeah, just search for me there on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram as well, but I forgot my details. I'm not on Twitter anymore. It's full of Nazis and bots.
Yeah, no worries. That's all good. No, I appreciate you coming on, and really enjoyed that pod. So as mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to have a little break now in January after this one. So we'll be back on the 23rd, hopefully, and around that sort of time, we'll be back to preview Game Week 23. Once again, Chris, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, and thank you, Joe, for coming on. It's been very useful as well with the kind of the period we are now in FPL to get your insight. So thank you very much.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thanks again for coming on, Joe, and have a good Game Week 20, everyone. I'm locking those teams ahead of the deadline on Saturday at 11 o'clock, and we'll see you in the next one, we'll hopefully have a couple of game weeks to review there, and some good game weeks, hopefully. So we'll see you next time. But once again, thanks for always following the podcast. And ahead of 2025, which will probably be our last year of the pod, as far as we know, because of busy times and all that. But we've really enjoyed the journey. So just keep on following the pod till the end of this season, and really appreciate the support. Especially on last week's on YouTube. We don't often do that, and it's just not feasible for us. But the support on that live stream was fantastic, and 300 views was really, really great to see. So thank you for tuning into that with FPL Salah. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.